This is Gemara Zevachim, Daf Yud Tes, the Daf for the day after Yom Kippur. We're going to get this up in Mirz Hashem before Yom Kippur. Those who like to plan, those who like to get an extra Daf in their bank before the Hilig Yom Adin. We like to dedicate today's shir as an incredible Schaz Refuah Shlema for Gabriel Simcha B'Miriam Ahuva. The incredible Kayach HaTaira should bring Gabriel Simcha B'Miriam Ahuva an incredible Refuah Shlema. We're holding about 10 lines on the bottom of Yud Ches Mebeis. The first word line is Chut and Kafel. We're in the middle of discussing the Big Day Kahuna, their material, and different dinim about them. So we're in the middle of a kasha in which the Gemara asks, "My dai bad kisna." How do you know that the word bad, the Torah says bad with regarding to the Big Day Kahuna? How do you know it means kisna? It means the linen. Amar Rav Yosef Rav Chanina davar oila min karka. Says Rav Yisrael Chanina, you know we learn it out from bad bibat. Something that comes from the ground comes up one at a time, and the word bad means such, which is this type of plant that grows one at a time, which is linen, which is flax, which grows in singular stalks. Ask the Gemara be'ima imra, maybe it means wool. Wool, quote unquote, grows off the animal, but it also grows in a similar sense one at a time. Answers the Gemara, Imra mifsal. Wool naturally splits, and therefore it's not bad, it's not one at a time. I kistanami mifsal. Answers the Gemara, de lukusa mifsal. That kisna, the flax, only split when you hit it, but naturally they stay singular. Ravina Amar says, Ravina meach, another Mikar Pa'arei Pishtin Hayu Yal Raisham Umechlase Pishtam Yal Masnehem Loi Yacharu Bayoza. Says the Pasuk in Yecheskel that their linen should be on their heads, linen hats, linen turbans, linen pants, linen trousers on their body, and they should not wear Bayoza. So what does the Torah say? The Torah says that it's made out of pishtan. We know elsewhere the Torah says in Vayikra it's made out of bad. So we see that bad is pishtan. Says Rav Ashi, you bring me a raya from Yecheskel Hanavi. Yecheskel Hanavi was many years after the Torah. So until Yecheskel came along, how do we know that bad is linen? Shoots back to Gemara L'Taimeich, according to your reasoning. How do we explain the brayse that says we saw that a kohen who's an arul who does not have a bris is not allowed to perform in the Beis Hamikdash, not allowed to perform the avodah? And from Moshe Rabbeinu we didn't learn this. You learn from Yecheskel's the Makar says the pasuk Koben Nechar 4 lines to the bottom. Arul lev arul basel avril mikdashi lishar seini. So it says the Gemara the same kasha. Where do you know this prior to Yecheskel? Ella, so what must be pshat? It's true we're bringing a Makar from Yecheskel, but you know what pshat is? Gemara Gemira La. Really, it's a Gemara. It's Halach LaMoshe Sinai. We learned this from Moshe and our Sinai, and then Bas Yecheskel Vaskum Yakra Hachanami. In our case, Gemara Gemira La. And the Yecheskel comes along and he puts it on the pasuk. Yecheskel come along, and therefore the real Makar is the halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Says the Gemara, "My lo yachiru biyaza." What does the pasuk mean at the end? They should not wear biyaza. Amar Abaye teaches Abaye lo yachiru b'makom shemazien. Says Abaye, you know what it means? They should not tie themselves, they should not put on their belt in a place in a place in which they sweat. It should be worn higher up. Excuse me, as we learned in a brayso. When they put on the belt, should not be below their loins, literally, not above their elbows, Ella, rather, kineged eitzila yadayam, rather it should be corresponding to their elbows. So we see both on the shirt and on the pants. And what this means is the area corresponding to your elbows, Rashi says, which means the belt is going to be somewhere, if you put your hand straight, somewhere belly button or a little bit lower range, the place where we wear our pants, says the Gemara, that's going to be the place for the place that we're going to be lachgar chagura. Says the Gemara, Amar Ravashi, Amar Lihuna Bar Nasan. Says Ravashi, Lihuna Bar Nasan, in the Chadev Kamina Kamede is Gidar Malka. I was standing in front of King Igzidar, Vavimadali Emanaye, and my belt was a little bit high, and the king pulled it down to appropriate place. And he said to me, you gotta be priestly, you gotta be dressed appropriately. It's fulfilled by you that the kings will fulfill your will. An incredible statement that even the kings are going to tend to the Yidden. We see over here how the incredible king was the one to go and fix the belt of Huna Bar Nasan, how the Yidden are the kings and everyone else takes care of us. And we see even in a physical dressing sense that the king went and did such. Continues the Gemara, Tinana, 6 lines down, Yutesa Mid Aleph, Kayin Shelaka Betzba'oi, Kayin has a wound in his finger, Karach Lav Gemi Bamikdash. He's allowed to wrap with it a gemi, like basically a band-aid or reed grass in the Mikdash. Avaloi b'Medina, but not in the Medina. V'ma'itzu in a dam. But if he did it to take out the blood, that is forbidden wherever you are, whether in or outside of the Beis HaMikdash. Now, Rashi here spells out what's the Chiddush. The Chiddush over here is, says Rashi, the second narrow line, you're allowed to put on this band-aid during the Avodah. Why? You're serving in God's palace and you see a makkah. Now, even though Avagav the Gemi Masi makkah of heels, we know there's an Isra Refuah you're not allowed to do on Shabbos. You might come to grind herbs, says and now we're explaining, because there's no Gzeira, you want to go proactively and put on that bandage to ensure that you're not serving in a situation that you have a wound that is visible. Says Rav Yehuda, it's only to put on a gemi, but to put on a small belt is aser. Why? Have a yiter begadim. That's going to be considered a yiter begadim, and you're not allowed to have extra garments. So we see that a small band-aid versus a larger band-aid could cause an issue. Rav Yochanan amar yiter begadim. Ella b'makim begadim, only even the place of the begadim which is not your hands. Shalom makim begadim lo yiter. Says Mar v'tevil l'mshem chatzitza. Says Mar, why is that a chatzitza? If you have a band-aid now, you're not able to hold and touch the klishares. Do the avodah, there's going to be something blocking. Says Mar b'small, your left hand. Inami shaloi b'makim avodah, or it's in a place, maybe the back of your hand, that's not actually going to touch anything during the avodah. And the Gemara explains that this is not agreed upon by all. Upliga de Rava, de Amar Rava Amar Chista. Be'emakam be'gadam avilunima achas chaytzatz. As even one strand, one hair is going to be chaytzatz. Shalai be'emakam be'gadim shalosh al shalosh chaytzatz. Says 3 by 3. But pachs mikan einai chaytzatz. So we see this argues with the shita that we just said, because he's saying that once it's shalosh by shalosh, it's going to be a chatzitza. Whereas we just said a moment ago that a tziltzil katan, according to the first shita, will be a chatzitza. Adi Rav Yechanan v'adi pligi. Says the Gemara, so he's talking Rav Yechanan, but Adi Rav Yehuda, Brei Rav Chia, not necessarily. Mi leim with the pligi, shani tziltzil katan chashiv. Maybe it's different, because maybe tziltzil katan is chashiv, and therefore, even though it's small, it might be controlled a yiter begadim. So lav dafka, are they arguing? Says the Gemara Lishna Achrina. Another lashon, 12 lines in the wide lines. First one line is Achrina. Amri la Rav Yehuda Brei Rav Chia. Lo yishanu elegam miyav tziltzal katan is chaytzitz. Rav Yechanan Amar lo imru chatzitza b'bachos mishalosh al shalosh. El b'makay begadim. That's where it's a chatzitza. Av shalom makay begadim shalosh shalosh chaytzatzes b'chos mekan einei chaytzatzes. Ve'aynu de Rava. And then that's the same thing as Rava. Amar Rav Chisda. Says Rav Chisda, according to this lashon, Lema pligi ad Rav Yehuda. Excuse me. Haynu de Rava. Amar Rav Chisda. Asks the Gemara, Lema pligi ad Rav Chia. Shani tziltzal katan the chashiv. But Rav Yechanan says the Gemara, my Arya Gemi. He should say that I shouldn't tziltzal katan. The Gemi Masi, that the Gemi is even going to heal, and that's the Chiddush that's telling us that in general would be Asr on Shabbos, but in Beis HaMikdash we're able to be Mekel. Continues the Gemara, 3 lines from the wide lines. Bai Rava. We're going to get now into the dinam of Chatzitzos. Again, we're learning a Chiddush that started in yesterday's daf. We know of Chatzitza going to the mikvah. We're learning of Chatzitza with regard to the Kohen and his begadim. There can be nothing blocking between the Kohen and his begadim. That if the Kohen is wearing something directly on his body, that is where his begadim have to be worn. But if he didn't have any sort of bandit, any sort of Chatzitza, that is going to be a problem. Bai Rava. Nechnesu loy ruach bebigdai mahu. What if there's wind in his begadim? Meaning, is that called a chatzitza? The begadim are not directly on his flesh at that moment. Al b'sarabin and valeka, the begadim are al b'sarai. Oidelma derech levisha b'kach. That's why you wear clothing. It's not always touching every part of your body. Continuing Gemara Shaila number 2. Kina ma, what about a louse shatachos? If the louse is dead, that's for sure. Because chaya mai. But what if the louse is alive? Asked the Gemara. Since it comes and goes, it's considered part of your body. The couple of Afar ma'u, Shaila number 3. What about dirt? Sheyachas. Afar vade chayitz. Ela avak. What about dust? Afar ma'u, ela avak afar, which is a lower level of dirt. Continues the Gemara. Shaila number 4. Beis hashachi ma'u sheyachos. Beis hashachi. If you have an area between the armpit and the beged. Again, we're seeing how tight fitted and how perfectly everything has to be. Is that a chatzitza? Al b'sarei b'inon, has to be mamish on your skin. V'haleka. Oidelma derech levisha b'kach. That's how you wear things. Hechlis yadatoy cheikoi ma'u. Next shaila number 5. If you put your hand into your shirt, kufa michayitz, could you be a chatzitza for yom begadim oilai? Nima ma'u shetachotz. What about one thread? Nima v'adei says, well, that's for sure. Elanima midoldeles ma'u. What about a thread hanging from the garment itself? Ma'u. So, Pai Mari Baravashi. Yatza Saira b'bigdoi ma'u. Shaila number 7. What if the kohen's hair goes under the clothing? Saira ki gufa dami is part of his body. Odamalav ki gufa dami. Shaila number 8. Pai Rav Zera tefillin ma'u she'achaytzu. What about tefillin? Is tefillin a chatzitza? Meaning, can the kohen wear tefillin and then he's wearing his clothing on top of it? Is the tefillin a chatzitza? So says the Gemara, Ali, but the man damar le'lav zman tefillin. According to the opinion that says you don't wear tefillin at night, then what? Lo tibay lecha kiv le'lechaitzi yoymanay mechaitzi. So just like it'll be a chatzitza and I be a chatzitza by day, ki tibay lecha le'man damar le'la zman tefillin. My mitzvah to gufei chayitz. Oiloi chayitz. Is the tefillin itself going to be a chatzitza or not? Do we say it's on your body, therefore it is chayitz, or do we say that no, it's not considered something extra? Agalgal milsa matzl kamedi Rav Ami. So the shailas went and circled until it got in front of Rav Ami. Amar le Talmud aruch ubi adinu tefillin chaytzatzes. The lemaisa tefillin we have a teretz is chatzitza. Meisvei asked the Gemara. Kayhan b'avidas l'vim v'dilchan v'yisal b'mamara b'tur minat tefillin u'minat tefillin. It's b'tur minat tefillin. Excuse me. It says our potter b'turim. I knew something was wrong. B'tur minat tefillah Umenat tefillin. They're potter from both. Says the Gemara, my love, eminichon einoi chaytzetzes. Does not mean that if someone put them on, they're not chaytzetzes. Says Gemara, no, hafoch, eminichon, they are chaytzetzes. Iachi, if that's true, says the Gemara, what do you mean you're paturin? It says the kohen is potter from tefillin. What do you mean potter? Asurim ibayile. It's asur, it's chatzitza. Says the Gemara, kimadik laviv Yisraelim. Delay masnulei aser shamachi tani paturim, because Yisrael and Levium Avada don't have the iser. Aiva tanya minichan ein chaytzetzes loikasha adiyad adiroish. Maish adiyad also yilvash al bisaroish. He never chaytz bin al bisaroish. The roish now makes it v'samtam and seves al roish. So why isn't the head tefillin also a chatzitza? Says the Gemara Tana. Says the Gemara, I'll tell you why tefillin shel roish is not a chatzitza. Says the Brisa, the hair of the kohen gadol you have to see between the tzitz and his hat. Shesham manichet tefillin, between the tzitz, kodesh l'Hashem, and the mitznafes. That's where the kohen will wear tefillin. That's where the kohen gadol wore tefillin. Excuse me. So says the Gemara, what do we see? We see clearly, as the top Rashi articulates, Helkach lekach chatzitza. We see that the tefillin shel roish is clearly not a chatzitza. V'tana ditzuk lashvinan eminichon ein chaytzetzes misham yitar begadim uditzuk lashvinan delav beged. And we continue in the next case of the Mishnah. The next case of the Mishnah was bechusar begadim. If you're now wearing all the clothing, mina apostles, Mikra, Chivar Allah, Kain v'tehira, Tahira Mechlal, Shehi Temeya. Says the Gemara, that shows that there is a level of Temeya prior. From here we see that, just as we see over here, one who's Tamei, Pasal up to Avaida, one who is a Mechusar Kippurim, I don't know if I said lacking in clothing. Excuse me. Chosek Kippurim means he's lacking in his kapara. He still needs to bring a carbon. He also will pass l'avoida. Shlarachas yadayim v'raglayim. Asechukachuk gamim chusar begadim. Taner Rabbanan kohen gadol shlataval. Shlakidesh a kohen gadol. That, and again, this is the daf for after Yom Kippur, but we're learning it before Yom Kippur. Incredible siyata d'shmaya to discuss the tefillah of the kohen gadol in Yom Kippur. If a kohen gadol did not do such, shalei taval, v'loi kidesh, bein beged lebeged, between one beged and the next, between changing from this big day love and the big day zav, bein avoida la'avoida, v'avad avoida, soik sheira, v'echen kohen gadol, v'echen kohen hedyet, whether kohen gadol or kohen hedyet, shalei kidesh yadav raglav, shachar zav avoida, soy, psula. So Amar le Rav Asi Rav Yechla Mechti, Chamesh tefillos v'asar kiddushin. The 5 mikvahs, the 10 washing hands of the Kirah and Yom Kippur, Daraisa, v'chuk kisebu le'akv. Amar le Amar Kra, v'lav shan levisha ma'keve, v'lav shan. So says the Gemara, says v'lav shan levisha ma'keve, saying davar acher ma'kev, no, only levisha should be. Savu panav. Rav Asi's face lit up, he was happy with that teretz. Amar le Rav Yechlan says, Vav ufta ksivlach. I've written a vav on a wood log, meaning he's saying it's not a good teretz. Yachid safra nami. Cause why? Then nothing else should be essential in the pasuk, and therefore what? It's safra when the kohen gadol Yom Kippur has to be mekadesh yadayim v'raglayim in the morning. That should not be an ikar. That should not passel. So rather, says the Gemara, Amar Chizki Amar Krav Yisalem Chayk Oilham. Loyal Zar there some Davar Ma'akev Vizaroi Ma'akev Boy Davar Shak Vizaroi Einoi Ma'akev Boy, to be telling you what's Ma'akev Vizaroi, which therefore says the Gemara, the first time the kohen gadol is mekadesh yadayim v'raglayim, that's the same as a regular washing your hands and legs. That's not going to passel, but the rest will. Rav Yechon Amar Me'achav Rachsu Mimenu Moshe V'Aaron Ubanav Davar Ma'akev Ubanav Ma'akev Boy Davar Shen Ma'akev Ubanav Ein Ma'akev Boy. And therefore, only the first one, which is ma'akev by everyone, will be ma'akev for the kohen gadol, and not the subsequent tevilos and Kiddushim Yodayim Virag Layim. But now it says Gemara, so we have two different Terutzim. So Rav Yochanan Maitem L'Amar Midachizkiya. Why does Rav Yochanan hold like Chizkiya? Amar Lacha Hu L'Daireis Udichsev Edach Maitem L'Amar Mehai Mibaylich Rav Yosi Rav Chanina Rav Yisrael Chanina Kol Kiyar She'in Ba Kedei L'Kadesh Arba Koyahanim Mimenu Ein Mikad Shebosh Namrachsu Mimenu Moshe Aaron Uba Nov. That is the level of Kiddush that is necessary and shows us the level, the amount of water that has to be held by the Kiyar. And that's going to be the Makar. Now, that's going to be the Makar. And, yeah, let's continue. Tanu Rabbanan. The first wide line. Now that we mentioned Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, we're going to go a little bit deeper in understanding the Avodah. Keitzad mitzvahs Kiddush. Miniach yodai havimanis al rag gabi raglayim hanis. Your right hand and your right leg, the other smells like gabi raglayim, smells your left hand and your left leg. Umekadesh, and you sanctify them, meaning you open up the kiyar and the water simultaneously is poured over both. Rav Yehuda Aimer, miniach shtei yadav zu agav zu. No, you put your 2 feet on top of each other, 2 hands on top of each other, and all of them on top of each other. Amr Lai, says the Gemara, Hiflagta. That's not possible. It's not possible to do this. You're going to fall. You put your 2 feet on top of each other, 2 hands on top of each other. You're going to fall. Says the Gemara, Shabar Karmelei, it's a good kasha. Your friend will help you that you're not going to topple over. The difference is going to be standing minatzara, which means if someone helps you stand, is that called standing? According to the first sheet, that's not. Therefore, you can't put your 2 hands on top of your 2 legs. According to the second sheet, that is. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. Why can't he just sit? Amarka lishareis v'shiros is always a mu'amad who is always going to be standing, and that's the reason why you cannot sit. Stop over here at the 2 dots. We'll pick it up from here. B'siyata dishmaya.